Welcome back to Swordwolf Forge, everybody. Today we're going to be doing our next video in our series of Bladesmithing 101. And up till now, it's been a lot more of me talking than doing. Well, now we're going to start really getting into the doing. Today we're going to be actually cutting out and shaping our blade, getting it ready for heat treat. I do want to apologize, though, for the lateness of this video. If you didn't know, this isn't my full-time job. I also work for a city in central Ohio. And several weeks back, we really got hit by some snow, over 12 inches. And part of my job for the city is snow removal. And because I live so far away from that city, what I'll do is I have a camping setup on the back of my pickup. I'll stay there until the snow event is over. Well, it took a couple days to get everything cleared up, and then we had another little snow. And long story short, I've been set back, and things have got set back here at the house. So we're finally getting caught up now. And so I just want to, again, apologize for not getting this video out sooner. So let's go ahead, though. Last time, in the last video, we were in our planning phase. So we drew out a knife concept that we liked. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to bring you over to the table. I'm going to show you what we got, and we're going to pick up where we left off there. And today what we'll be doing is, again, we're going to be cutting out this knife, getting it ready for a heat treat. So let's get going. So in the last video, we had designed our knife on paper. And now what I've done is I'd made a template. And then I traced it out on this 5160 steel, so I know where to cut. You can also, though, if you want, you can trace it on the paper, draw it out, put it on your steel, trace it out that way too. That works just as fine. Also, again, I mentioned earlier, if you want to forge out your blade, by all means do it. This is a beginner class. If you're not there yet, what I'm doing is keeping these things simple so you can get a first knife under your belt, start to understand why things go in a certain way, get some good, methods and repetition, and build from there. But that being said, though, again, I'm not going to be using this blade, but I want to just show you that, this is a blade that's been forged, and it still needs some cleaning up, and you would do some stock removal even with this. So there's nothing wrong with stock removal versus forging. The only problem, one is knife making, the other one is bladesmithing. The only problem I ever have is with somebody that cuts this thing out, does a stock removal, and then says he forged out the blade. That's when you run into problems. But anyway, so this is going to be our next step. Get your steel. This is 5160, 3/16 inch thick. And we're going to take this over to the vise. Now, there's several ways you can cut this out. Personally, I don't care. I'm going to use a hand grinder, but if you've got like a metal cutting bandsaw that can cut that out, by all means do it. But I'm going to cut out roughly the shape, and then I'm going to take it over to my 2x72 grinder and clean everything up. So I'm going to move over to the vise, and we're going to get going. Okay, so I'm over here at the vise. I've got my steel clamped up, fresh wheel on my grinder. Before I do this, I want to kind of go through my head on systematically how I want to do this. It's not something you have to do, but I like to do it. So I'm going to cut off here, and I'll probably do a couple diagonal cuts right there. Here, I'll probably make a cut right through there and another one right there to remove this piece. And then up here, I can either make one straight cut or maybe two cuts, because we're going to clean all that up on the belt sander anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Make sure you're especially wearing your PPE. I know, like in our first class or video, we went over PPE. Definitely eye protection when you're doing this, because this throws out a lot of sparks. It's not that easy when a camera's in the way. See if that cut went through enough. Sometimes you just got to kind of, there we go. Okay, so there she is, rough cut. Gonna let that cool off for a couple minutes because it does get hot. And now we'll just take it over to the grinder and really clean up our edges. All right, so we've got a rough profile cut out. Actually, that looks like a pretty cool looking tanto. As you can tell by lines, we still have some material to remove here. And if you have a 2x72 grinder, it's probably the easiest way to do it. I understand you may not have a 2x72 grinder. One of the options you may have is with your hand grinder that like we use to cut this out, you can put something like a flap disc on there, and that can remove this steel and smooth everything out if you don't have one of these. Another option, it would take a little bit longer, but you can also use a file. But you want to clean up these lines. And you know, I showed this earlier. I hand forged this, but it has some cleaning up to do. So I don't care if you've forged or you're doing stock removal, you're going to have to do some cleaning up on your profile, especially when you're beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and profile this a little bit better on this 2x72, and this rest really helps out a lot too. If you're new to this, one thing you don't want to be just pushing in as hard as you can. Okay. One is that's unsafe. Something might give and you're going to go right into this, and this can really hurt you. So let the belt do the work. This has variable speed, and actually these belts work better at higher speed. But again, if you watch me, I'm just going to be finessing this. I'm looking at my lines, cleaning everything up, and this really shouldn't take too long. Okay, so that's about it. If you noticed, one thing is you want a bucket of water by your grinder, because this will get really hot. So it just helps cool things down and make it more comfortable for you. If you noticed, I was doing this a couple times, and I'm just checking to see how it feels in my hand, because you're going to have some wood scales on here too. I'm just kind of gauging on how that felt, and if I need to take a little bit more off, now's the time to do it, because the steel's pretty soft. But I'm pretty happy with this. So the last step we're going to do today in this video is we want to drill our pinholes for our handle scales. So I'm going to take a brief break, get things set up for that, and we'll drill out the 2 pinholes, and then we're really all set. After that, we will be ready for heat treat. Okay, I lied. I was feeling this knife, how it felt in my hand a little bit. In this area right here, it doesn't feel very comfortable to me. So I've got this small wheel attachment, and I can change the diameter of these wheels here. And what I want to do is I want to clean this up a little bit before I do the holes for the handle scale. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then I promise we'll get to drilling some holes. And just like that, dip that in water because it might be hot. That feels a lot better to me. And if you don't have one of these things, you can get some files. But, you know, when we talk about knife design, you don't want a knife that's going to hurt the user. And that's one area where it can hurt the user. So I'm a lot happier with that. Okay, so now we're ready to mark where we want our pinholes at. I've seen guys go through a lot of complicated ways to do this, and then there's some ways that, in my opinion, are a lot easier. On smaller knives, I only use 2 pins anyway, so you're not really worried about the spacing in between the 2 pins. If you get into using more like 3, 4, you could put as many pins in as you want. But keeping it simple, just I'm using 2. And I mean, if you want, you can measure. So that's roughly 1 inch right there width. So we can put one right in here. That's 1.25 inches. I just eyeball it. That looks like it's about the center. I mean, if you're off a little bit, when we're cleaning up our handle and everything, when we got everything glued on, we can take some out of here. But I'm just marking here because what we want to do now is we want to punch these so the drill bit doesn't wander off on us. I just keep it simple, especially with 2 pins. I am keeping in mind how far I'm going to want my handle scales to come, and they're probably going to be right in here somewhere. Because you don't want a pin right on the end here, right where your handle scale is going to be. So you kind of want it further back, and the back one right here, that looks pretty good and centered. So I'm ready to punch this out, and then we'll be able to drill it. Okay, so I've got a little punch here. And all we're going to do is center it right on our marks where we want our pins. Give it a nice hit. Maybe kind of hard to see. You see that little divot there. So my drill bit has a little pilot to go into. Now over to the drill press. All right, so I've got everything mounted up here in the drill press. And here's a time where you really want to be mindful of what you're doing if you haven't, even if you've done this before. What a potential danger here we have is sometimes when you're drilling through this steel, it will catch on this drill bit and it will start spinning this piece of steel 100 miles an hour and right where possibly your hands are. So a couple things you can do is, one is you can see I've clamped down the steel. I've also put an additional clamp here, possibly to catch it. The best thing to do though is if it happens, is just hit the power real quick. But I think some people call it like the propeller of death or something like that. But it can get ugly. So we want to think ahead a little bit on that. I get most of my bits. These are just jobber bits. You can buy super expensive bits, and sometimes you might need a pure carbide like bit on some real tough stuff. But most of my bits I just get from Pop's Knife Supply. They're called jobber bits. These are 3/16 bits, and they do pretty good. But I also like to use a little bit of this lubricant on the bits, that pink stuff you see on the bit, to kind of lengthen the life of the bit itself. So let's go ahead and drill these out. And I'm not putting a lot of pressure. Lift up a little bit, try to clear them shavings out. Number one. Let's see if we can get number two lined up. I think I'm going to have to take this clamp off for number two. Just move it around so we can get to it. Yeah. My other indentation is right there. So I'm just going to check it. Right there. All right. 2 holes drilled. Before we conclude, I want people to be mindful. After you drill those holes in your tang, you might get these little metal boogers sticking up, and those can really put a hurting on you if you're not paying attention. So I suggest taking it over to a grinder or a wire wheel or something and try to get those off, because when you're getting busy, you're going to forget about that. So you might want to just save yourself a little bit of pain and get rid of those. Okay, everybody who's been following along, we now have something that looks like a knife. It's not a knife yet, though. We got to do the heat treat, and that's going to be our next video. We'll be getting more in depth about what is heat treat, why are we doing it, how does it affect the steel, resources, and all that stuff. But I'm going to there's books on heat treating, okay? So we're going to really simplify it so it's easy to understand. And the main thing is, you know why we're doing it. So thanks for tuning in again. Let's pray to the snow gods. We're done with that white stuff. And I'll see you in the next video. Stay sharp, everybody.